Greg Matthew from Dominion Energy. I lead our electric transmission engagement and permitting group. So we do all of the public engagement for our large transmission projects, all of our local and non-environmental permitting, as well as some employee development and workforce development in my group. So it's a fun time to be in the utility. It's an exciting time. If you would have told me when I started in electric transmission 12 years ago that we'd be so popular and everybody would understand what we do and the value that transmission brings to the grid, especially with data center growth, I would not have taken that bet. But right now, we are a very popular organization, to say the least. For those that don't know, Dominion Energy serves both retail customers in Culpeper, but we also, from a transmission perspective, serve our Dominion Energy distribution as well as Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. So all cooperatives and municipalities in the Commonwealth, in our service territory, as you can see on the map, is served by Dominion Energy Transmission. And so just wanted to make that clear because I think sometimes folks don't really understand. Before I move on, I have some colleagues in the room, so I'll let you all know.
So I'm Jeannie Underwood. I'm the External Affairs Representative. Hi, snuck in on me. Yeah, so I work in External Affairs and I try to let our Board of Supervisors know. I actually have Fauquier and Culpeper and Rappahannock counties as part of my oversight area. So what I share with the folks there is I'm your one-stop shop for, kind of your liaison to the rest of the teams. So I'm also locally based here. I actually live in Fauquier County. So it's a quick trip over here for me, but that's kind of my role as a facilitator in the External Affairs group.
Hi, my name is Elise Weisenberger. I'm a research associate at McGuire Consulting, and we work very closely with Dominion Energy on this project.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get started. Are you running it? Or are you running?
I think.
Oh, and I can run it. Oh, fantastic. Let's see this first. Oh, good. There we go. Okay, so I don't think it's much of a surprise, but the demand across the Commonwealth is growing at an exponential rate. Over the last sort of 10 years or so, we were really growing sort of through the teens. We were the fastest growing utility at about 0.5% to 1.5%. Now we're projected to grow 6.5%, mainly attributed by data centers, but there's another sort of set of drivers that I'll go through in a second. But as you can imagine, we've been providing electric service for nearly 100 years, and we're about to double what took us 100 years to grow into over the next 15 years. And so that's requiring a lot of planning and accommodation for that load growth to maintain reliability for our customers. And so there's sort of an all of the above approach when it comes to that strategy. One is generation. So given the fact that we need so much more electrons on the grid, generation needs to come, and that can come in a variety of fashions, whether that's solar, wind, gas, offshore wind, more nuclear. All of the above is what we need. And that's really across the marketplace. We're part of an organization called PJM. It's our regional transmission organization. It's a membership organization, but it basically manages the market and ensures reliability for customers across 13 states and the District of Columbia, and the utilities in those states are members of that. And so we share resources, we share generation resources to get the most economic deployment of generation, which is slowly retiring over the course of that footprint. And so the generation is much needed, not just in Virginia, but elsewhere. If the more resources we have, the more we can share, the less cost it is for customers. And then, of course, continuing to move towards carbon-free energy. We have the largest offshore wind project in Virginia or in the country. It's producing electrons right now, which is pretty exciting. We've got, I think, 4 to 6 turbines up and running now. only 170 more to go. And so we'll look to finish that at the end of this year or early next year. And then, of course, from an all the above standpoint on the transmission side and distribution side, it is really sort of accommodating that facilitation of new electrons, but also making sure that we're maintaining the reliability. And so I'll go through really sort of the transmission part of that strategy. And so, we've been doing this for quite a long time, and Virginia has been well positioned to meet the moment when we talk about sort of that exponential growth from about a percent growth to 6.5% growth, namely because we had that growth through the teens. So we were able to change over a lot of our older facilities to newer facilities, and expand the transmission grid, especially in Northern Virginia. But we often talk about drivers and benefits, and the drivers are reliability concerns. They can be economic development, and obviously data centers is part of that. But for every facility that we put in service, it helps with the reliability. So these are two graphs that I like to show. One is the investment across the Commonwealth for Dominion Energy Virginia in the transmission network, and the corresponding reliability benefit that we get over time. So as investments have increased and we've deployed that capital across the Commonwealth, reliability has improved for customers, which is a good thing. We don't want to see reliability suffer as we make the same investments. Do you have a question or just okay? I'll go. And so for every dollar of transmission investment that we deploy, customers tend to see nearly $2 in benefits, whether that's reliability, cost-effective service, more delivery of cost-effective generation. So across the value chain, transmission investment equals benefits directly to our customers. And we talk about the forecast. We really are projecting about 20 years out, and you can see from the line, it is growing exponentially, like I've talked about. This graph comes from PJM. They're responsible for producing the annual load growth. And so all of the electric service companies, whether it's co-ops or Dominion Energy Virginia, they produce a forecast on retail demand each year to PJM. And PJM puts it in their methodology, and they produce a forecast each year that we then have to plan for. This is really important, not just for transmission planning, but also generation planning. But a lot of questions come, well, is the forecast real? And so the blue bars show our actual peak demand each year for the last 5 years. And what's interesting is that each of the last 5 years, we've seen peaks in that year. And each of the last 5 years, the peak of the system has outpaced the forecast. So this year we're about even, and we haven't hit summer yet. And we set all of our system peaks in the last 12 months, which is an important note, not just to verify that the forecast is real, but that also makes the ceiling of our planning criteria sort of a new number. So every megawatt above forecast that is real, the transmission system now has to plan towards. So it's not just a forecast, but it's actual load that's happening on the system. And so the drivers beyond just data centers are electrification and reshoring of manufacturing, grid security and flexibility to address sort of the evolving security dynamic and posture and threats in the world. Of course, we're always trying to modernize our aging infrastructure, and we can do that in concurrence with accommodating economic development. And then, of course, new generation. New generation puts a lot of pressure on the transmission grid. And so how the energy flows from those different resources changes how the grid works and operates. And so here in Culpeper, you all have been very successful in your economic development sort of program and efforts over the last few years, especially in the data center growth. And so we monitor obviously the megawatts of load requested on the system, and we're seeing just over 2,000, about 2,500 megawatts of approved data center capacity in Culpeper. And so We see obviously a lot of data center growth across Loudoun and Prince William County, but a lot of the new growth is happening down the I-95 corridor and what we call North Central Virginia, so Culpeper, Stafford, Caroline, and the like. And so that is necessitating a lot of projects outside of Northern Virginia, which I'll get to in a second. But just to recap what we're doing here in Culpeper. There we go. Here's that. So we've got a number of projects. Of course, we have the Culpeper Tech Zone build out. That's requiring some upgrade of the transmission line and a new transmission line where you can see in red. The purple is existing transmission lines. And so Culpeper Tech Zone, we have 4 substations which have been approved. They're all going to go in service in various times, anywhere from 28 through 2029. Sears Kaiser is a new substation due to come online in 2027, and then the Germana substation set to be energized in 2027 as well. And so these projects have all been through the State Corporation Commission, and they're all in various stages of construction. So the board has also approved these data center, these substations.
Sorry, could you repeat the first one you said? So you said Sears Kaiser 2027, Germana 2027.
And then so the 4 substations in Culpeper Tech Zone.
Yeah.
So Chandler, McDevitt, Mount Pony are all in 28.
Okay.
And then Palomino in 29, sorry.
Okay.
28 and 29.
What are the sizes of these substations?
So these are 230 kV substations here on sort of what we call local reliability projects to serve the distribution network. So about 4 to 7 acres, depending.
About 4 to 7 acres
Yes.
is what these new ones are scheduled.
Yeah, so I make that point because these sizes are different than what we'll talk about for the 765 line. But that includes stormwater as well, so it's about that same size, that size for the site. Whether that's not including buffers or anything like that.
Thank you.
Okay, so when we talk about all of the above approach, and when we think about what Dominion has to do to serve its customers, and when we talk about Valley Link, it really came out of this process from PJM, what they call their open window process, or what is referred to as competitive transmission. So each year, they may have one or many reliability open windows, which basically looks at a time period out. In this case, it was looking at 5 years out. To see what's happening on the system based on the load forecast and a number of other factors. But based on the reliability criteria that we have to abide by, it looks at what issues are going to be on the system in that year. So 2024 open window was looking at 2029 system, how it's being configured, what generations on the system, what load is ramping up, and it identifies issues that need to be resolved. It puts those issues out to bid, and all transmission owners can come and competitively bid on those projects, even if it's not in their service territory. So this is a lengthy process, again, happens year over year, up until, well, last year, it's always been a 5-year outlook forecast. Last year looked at 8 years. And so 5 years out in 2029, the system had a number of issues that we needed to resolve. One was increased load demand across PJM, especially in eastern side of PJM. So PJM goes sort of to the Ohio and west and comes up down to the mid-Atlantic. And so there was increasing load on the east side of PJM. There's generation retirements in the east side of PJM, namely in Maryland. And then, of course, Dominion zone was growing south of Northern Virginia. And so these contributing factors really put pressure on how the electrons were flowing from western Pennsylvania or western PJM, so the Ohio River Valley, east into eastern PJM. And it was overloading the system and is creating what we call violations on the system. And so we had to figure out, how do we increase the tie-ins to our neighbor utilities while also move energy in central Virginia to accommodate those issues. And so because of that, we looked at our neighbors and what technologies they deploy on their system and what we may need to do in Virginia. And so Valley Link joint venture was created. So this really brings together three really impressive utilities that have their own strengths in their own service territories. Dominion Energy Virginia is really well known as the expert at the 500 kV voltage level. That is the backbone of the system here in the state. It's really the backbone of the Mid-Atlantic and the Eastern Interconnect. And 500 kV system is the traditional highest voltage on the Dominion zone. But we knew that this dynamic in 2029 may better be served from a different voltage. And that comes into play on the 765 kV voltage. It's basically worth, a single 765 kV line is basically worth 3 500 kV lines. And so from an economic scale and the ability to transfer power, 765 just becomes a much cost-effective means to move power around. And AEP is really the across the country, well-known in 765 development and operation. And then FirstEnergy, knowing that we need to tie in with our partners to the north, FirstEnergy came into play there. So it really brings into sort of our strengths around what we bring to the table. And we figured, in this case, 3 is better than 1. And so we're moving together on a number of projects that were awarded back in 2024 to Valley Link. It's really 3 projects. It's a northern 765 line that's about 250 miles that goes from West Virginia to the tip of Virginia into Maryland at a substation that connects to the 500 grid in Maryland. And then we have some projects at the 500 kV level to bring that power down into northern Loudoun County, and where it just bolsters the network up there. And then we have the Joshua Falls to Yeat 765 transmission line that ties into AEP's substation down near Lynchburg. And then comes up through central Virginia. And then we have a substation in Caroline County tied to the Valley Link joint venture as well. That substation in Caroline County is tied into the network based on the Dominion Energy project from our North Anna plant, goes through that Caroline County called Thornburg, and then ends in a substation in Fauquier County called Brister.
Excuse me, you just gave us a ton of information. Do you have a map? Yes. Let's get us up to speed. You have a map that kind of shows that?
So I do have a map. The dynamic is that I can't show you that map right now because the folks on the Northern Project that we call the Northern Project is about to release their new routes this month. And so I didn't want to show a map that showed the Northern route, but I do have a map that shows the Joshua Falls to Yeat map.
Can you show the map about the Caroline County to Fauquier?
I don't have it here, but
Okay.
if I can pull up I can pull something up.
I see about transmission lines and just. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's
I'll
okay.
keep my mouth shut.
No,
You see about transmission lines, just like to see a map.
sure. So why don't we?
Yeah, I was confused or interested also by the third branch. I'm not sure I've heard that one discussed. So that is a part of this, of the Valley Link
So
project.
So as joint ventures go, we had a joint planning process going into the open window. And then through the negotiation, we just divvied up some projects that were assigned to Dominion Energy and then assigned to the joint venture. So it was really just those 3 projects assigned to the joint venture, 2 transmission lines and 1 substation. And then the 500 kV project from North Anna through Louisa, really using existing right of way. Then through Caroline, goes up the east side of I-95 and then comes back over to Fauquier County.
Okay,
That's a 500 kV project awarded to Dominion Energy Virginia. So we're going through the public engagement process on that right now as well. We can get all that information. We have a bunch of maps on the website. I'm sorry, I just wasn't prepared.
no, it's okay, and I have heard of that project, I didn't understand the connection
Yes,
with development,
sorry.
but thanks for
They
explaining.
all came out of that same open window.
Gotcha, okay.
They all worked together, whether or not it was assigned to Dominion Energy Virginia or Valley Link.
Can you give us a little background on how it was chosen to come through Orange and Culpeper and into Fauquier, the
Sure.
Joshua Valley project? How is that identified? What's the benefits for Dominion on that?
Sure, so the way that it was identified is we knew Joshua Falls was the connection point on the southern line, because that's where 765 terminates closest to the Dominion Energy system. So AEP has 765 in Southwest Virginia, and that's where it ends. So we knew that was the connection point. And then the Yeat substation was tied into the 500 network that's in that vicinity. And so, so the Yeat substation needed a strong tie-in point to the system north of North Ann, in Louisa County. And the further north we could go, the better off was just based on how the load flow works on the system. So again, this project is really bolstering the growth that's happening across the Commonwealth, but really what's happening in north central Virginia. And so a few things really pushed the alignment that you see here on the map to where it is. One is we first start with a study area, and in that case, it's we studied about 13 counties and how we can get from Joshua Falls up to Yeat in a way that balances impacts to cultural resources, historic resources, that avoids conservation land, sensitive environmental features, as well as the built environment. After evaluating over 12,000 miles of line segments, we got to this alignment through 9 counties, simply because we knew that how we crossed the James River was going to be important. We knew that as we got through Louisa, that we couldn't cross Lake Anna, so we had to choose which side of Lake Anna to go on. And then also, there was a lot of conservation easements, battlefields, and the built environment. So we look at all of those constraints. We look at linear infrastructure. So we look at, can we use parallel existing transmission lines? Can we parallel existing roads? After review of that, there was no way to get a significant amount of length parallel to those existing linear infrastructures, namely because there was a lot of development that happened next to our transmission lines as well as roads. And so you would have to constantly come off of that linear infrastructure, and it's not very clean because we have buildings or homes, and then every so often you have to come off the transmission line, and it just became more problematic and more impactful. And so we found some ways to create new right of way that, again, limited impacts. It didn't avoid all the impacts, but limited impacts in this regard. Why we're in that alignment is trying to cross the James River once. If we say Joshua Falls is right on the James River, so staying south of that, going through Appomattox, allows us to maximize timberlands, which is important from a co-location standpoint. It allows us to possibly cross the James River at existing power stations. So we have what's called the Greenbow Power Station and the Bear Garden Power Station, and that's right across the river from each other. So we're able to use sort of an industrial crossing across the James River, and then you look at other opportunities. So Louisa has a tech overlay district that we were trying to come through as a co-location opportunity, and then staying west of Lake Anna, proved to be the least impactful part. So that's how we got the alignment. So there's a few anchor points when you're trying to do 100+ miles, you're trying to anchor it, and then you're trying to create sections that keep the distance away from residents and balance all those impacts. That's how we got to that alignment. So in March, we had open houses. We had 11 open houses, 4,000 people attended one of our open houses. We got over 2,000 comments that we responded to. And then we've also had a number of actionable comments to make routing adjustments to. So that's what the project team is doing now. We're making route adjustments. We have open houses scheduled for June. And we'll revise what you see on the map based on all that feedback that we've gotten from counties, historical entities, and individual property owners. I'll skip to the end and we can start. And I guess most relevant is the Yeat substation. As you can see, hopefully, this is our existing 500 corridor that comes up from North Anna. It goes north to provide electricity north and south, depending on how load flows go. So the site in Culpeper touches our existing 500, which is really important. This is really important. This is a really strong tie-in point on the grid for the 765. The acreage that we're looking at is about 500 acres. And then the substation should be around 100 to 120 acres of that 400. We feel that we're going to be able to centrally locate that substation on the parcel. There'll be a lot of buffering of existing forested land on the edges of the parcel, whether that's along the road front or to the neighbors to the west. And then obviously to the east, I think there's more timberland that the property owner owns. And then this substation location is about 3 miles into Culpeper.
I'm sorry, you lost me. You have 448 acres. Is this for transmission lines or is this one round?
So the property that Valley Link purchased is in yellow,
Okay.
and it's 448 acres that we purchased, which touches the 500 line.
What is that? What is that 448 acres going to be for if the substation is so small?
Buffering, making sure that we look at the topography. So depending on, we need a flat land for the substation. So, but also it was just the parcel size. But we figured if we bought something that large, we would be able to centrally locate the substation and have a significant amount of trees left on the edges to buffer the visual and other impacts that may come from the substation.
And that's the land you own now, right? Or is it Valley Link?
Valley Link does. And so we're starting, I think you heard last night, we're starting the pre-application process with Culpeper. Again, the idea is to centrally locate the actual pad of the substation in the middle of this polygon.
Can you show the map that was right before this one? I was trying to figure out. Okay.
So, to answer the question, why is Yeat where it is? Look at, again, the strong ties, and it had to be at the 500 kV level. And so in yellow, so the purple is existing transmission lines, and the yellow is where the 500 corridors are. And so those were our opportunities for strong tie-ins for the 765. Anything north, obviously the transmission lines would have to come through more of Culpeper to try to get to north. Unfortunately, when you get more north, there's more conservation lands, and so it became a very challenging routing opportunity for the transmission line. And so, ideally located where it is now, because it's the parcels touching the 500 kV transmission network. There's no additional right of way needed for any 500 transmission level upgrades that may be needed. And then, of course, it limits the line miles, the new line miles in Culpeper.
Just, kind of bringing it to today. Let's say this line was in today, the last 2 days, PJM did an emergency call for, generation.
Yes.
Due to the grid being near, capacity and near rolling, brownouts, I would assume. That's why they did that call. What benefit does this have, to the PJM area and more importantly, this group for Culpeper County?
Right.
And the town.
There's a few things that happen. In the most vulnerable parts of the year for the grid is spring and fall. That's when generation is mainly being worked on. So the reason why this was an emergency event, because it was in abnormal conditions, that a lot of generation was offline. And so, for maintenance, and so we didn't have enough generation in Virginia to serve the potential load. There wasn't enough, there was two things: there wasn't enough generation outside of Dominion Zone, and there wasn't enough transmission capacity to import anything that was available to Virginia. And so the last 2 days were emergency conditions because of those effects. When this line and all the other lines that we have in projected to be in service, it reduces that variability quite significantly. It may not necessarily on the generation side, but the more transmission lines and the more capacity we have, the operators are able to switch things around to maintain reliability. And so right now, there's no, we only have limited tie-ins to our neighbors for PJM for importing. This gives us obviously another source for that.
And so this would allow you more ability to import
it would have
generation into the system.
Correct. And then we're able to switch things around if a contingency happens, this line would sort of bolster any unexpected issues on other transmission lines.
And what is the projected project completion date?
I don't know what they said last night, so we'll see what they.
I don't think they gave one last
They
night.
didn't say it last night.
I'm not trying, it's not a trick question.
No, it's not a trick question. So the need date is 2029.
Just what was stated.
Yes, the need date is 2029. Given constructability, permitting timelines, the time it's gonna take to purchase the easements across 115 miles, the subsequent environmental permitting that we'll need, we're looking at a completion date more in the 2030, 2031 timeframe. We'll have to figure out operationally what that gap means between us and PJM, but the need date does not go away. As we saw, the forecast is what's driving the need date, and the forecast is pretty much how the grid is operating.
And that would be for all 3 branches or just this branch?
Just this one. The northern one is still going.
Their timeline as well, but that's 260 miles. So,
gotcha. And you've already purchased the land here in Culpeper, correct? That substation land is purchased. So when you're talking about the easements, that's going into Orange, Louisa, Fluvanna, all that is still in the works.
So we're going through the public engagement process, trying to figure out trying to get as much input as possible to reduce impacts. I know we can't avoid it, but we heard loud and clear from the March open houses that we didn't do a good enough job to stay into property boundaries versus I think we did a lot more straight line through middle of people's parcels. And so we heard that loud and clear. We heard proximity to homes needed to be further away. And so things like that is what we'll do. Then we'll put forward our application to the State Corporation Commission, who has ultimate authority over what route we build. And so we'll give some options to the State Corporation Commission. They could commission their own routing study to find something maybe what they feel may be better or different. And then they get to choose what route we build. And then once we get that approval, then we'll go through the easement negotiation process to purchase easements.
So no matter what, there will be a substation in Culpeper because you own the property, or what is that? Because I know there's a large group that.
That's
you know,
right.
That is against that area,
Yes.
but you own the property. Is that locked in, that is definitely gonna be the substation no matter what, just,
Well, first of all, PJM has approved this project as needed. Obviously, the State Corporation Commission has local authority of the facility, so they have to confirm the need. So let's just start there.
okay.
Next is making sure that we have a route, or the State Corporation Commission approves a route that limits impacts, which they'll get to. If they find the need, they have to find a route. And we feel the best tie into the system, the most cost-effective tie into the system is right here. And so, of course, we'll have to go through the Culpeper process to make sure that we're managing their expectations from a site plan perspective and a special exception perspective. But that's a tie-in that we think is the most effective and cost-effective and efficient way to get the power onto the grid. Anything else would, it's hard to say, but line miles equals more impacts. So a line that's 130 miles long is more impactful than a line that's 115 miles long, just by numbers, right? Because it's another 15 or 30 miles. So anything more north creates more impacts, but anything north really becomes a very challenging routing exercise, given all the conservation easements and state-owned land that's just north of Culpeper. So if we route someplace else, they would probably need more transmission lines because we have to get to the 500 network. We have to get there. So anything else, if you go more south, there's probably going to be more transmission lines, even north, because we have to get that power onto the 500 system, and we have to get it. And then there's always ancillary projects based on how those electrons are flowing. Right now, the evaluation that we've done, all the ancillary projects are in existing rights of way. But if that substation's anywhere different, there's probably going to be new rights of way, in addition to the 765.
How long have you owned that land?
So just recently.
I just had a general question. Could you explain the relationship between the PJM's expedited interconnection track and the Valley Link project?
There is none. That's a generation process that they're going through.
Okay,
but
that's
it's not a
clear to me.
traditional.
That's not a part of their about expedited interconnection track. It's not about transmission.
It's not about transmission, it's about generation.
Gotcha.
But again, this project was a 2024 project that came through that competitive open window process.
This is a question I should have asked a while ago. What does PGM stand for?
So it used to stand for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland,
Okay,
but it's officially PJM. It's no longer an acronym.
okay,
Right, it's no longer, but
okay, got it.
PJM is a regional transmission operator, so they're commissioned by FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, to facilitate not only the federal reliability standards, but also the reliable and affordable delivery of power. So they dispatch generation. Think of them as like the air traffic controller for electrons. They dispatch the most cost-effective generation across the market. They facilitate transmission, what they call transmission expansion plans, which not only address reliability concerns on the grid, but also what's called congestion. And congestion means just like the highway or the HOV lane. If it's congested, it costs more to move the electrons. And so we have projects to relieve that congestion so that customers are not paying higher prices to get on the on-ramp. If that makes sense.
Gotcha. That was actually,
in the country.
that was.
PJM is the largest.
I had Pennsylvania and I was like, maybe.
Why they didn't, I mean, I'm from New Jersey, so why they didn't put the N in there, I don't know, but Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland.
So I mean, at y'all's level, this is something you're dealing with on a consistent basis. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
Yes, we have a contract.
that monitors the grid through PJM, and so we do setbacks, and with setbacks when this need is served, and we receive a financial benefit from that. So we get a rebate from that power production because we're a very large power consumer as an entity off the grid. Yeah. So it's in our interest to have the ability to shut down, not fully shut down, but reduce power. Like go into setback, winter setback, summer setback, at the end of the day, something like that. So but that's monitored and we receive benefit for that.
Okay.
So, so generally speaking, the stronger the transmission grid, the more dependable it is, the more reliable it is for every single customer across the Commonwealth. It's not just about large loads, it's about you and me as someone who owns a house or pays a utility bill. It's about fire and police essential services. It's about hospitals and maintaining the reliability for everyone. So this project really raises sort of rising tide, raises all boats on all the transmission lines that serve all the communities. Yes, is the driver load growth. Yes, is that those drivers mainly data centers. But as we can see, Culpeper has its share of data centers and growth across north central Virginia. And so this transmission project really is going to benefit all of us. I think from an economic development perspective, having dependable energy is really important. And we know the benefits that come with what power is there when you need it. They don't have to be concerned about whether or not they have to have backup generation always running. I was in Loudoun County last night. They're really concerned about backup generation with their data centers. And we don't want to be in a position where we have to turn people's lights off because we are preventing cascading outages. So this project sort of does all of that. It's just in 2029. We have a number of projects that are due in 2027 and 2028. We have a number of projects that are due beyond 29, but they all build on each other.
I don't know if you talked to this now, but can you talk about the potential benefits to Virginia of the potential merger?
No, I can't. What I can say,
Fair enough.
what I can say about it is it's all new news for all of us. But as you guys can imagine, a utility business is capital intensive. And so if we have better access to capital and we have better access to cheaper capital, the cheaper it is for our customers, because ultimately we recover those investments from customers. And so being a bigger company has better access to better ratings from the bond agencies. So our borrowing power is better at a lower rate, and then enticing investors to come in with capital is really important. And so
significant generation too, don't they?
Yeah, they're in 40. NextEra is in 49 states, primarily with generation and some competitive transmission. Primarily, they own Florida Power and Light, which is their regulated utility. What we understand now is Dominion Energy is going to keep its brand and it's going to keep its own operations. So we'll see how that materializes over the next handful of months. We're set to close in 12 to 18 months. So let's just say end of next year. Lots to figure out through the next 18 months. But we were sort of talked to on Monday, and the idea is to keep Dominion Energy as an operating company with its own services and customers and brand. Any other questions on Valley Link? I think the main thing that I'd like to leave you with is that a stronger grid really helps all of us. And not to put another fine tune, but Culpeper has had a significant amount of economic development that is requiring more energy. And this project will help serve that. And if this project isn't approved, which we think that it's needed, and we'll prove that in the State Corporation Commission. If it's not built, a lot of those data centers here in Culpeper won't be able to get served.
Real quick, the narrative, I mean, again, I've just kind of stayed on the exterior of this because we have great people that are at the top that are in the minutia, but the narrative is that it's a line running through Culpeper and it's not benefiting Culpeper, I think. I mean, so that I've learned a little bit more today.
I would agree on that assessment. Transmission is one of those things where it's so removed and if somebody's light switch is always going to work, and we say from a transmission perspective that there's reliability concerns, it's hard for the average person to equate both of them. But what we're trying to show is that, especially in Culpeper, that there's not just data center growth in Loudoun County, but data center growth really across the Commonwealth. From Loudoun down to Mecklenburg County, there's data center growth all over the place. And so there is direct benefits, and the transmission lines that are vulnerable right now won't be vulnerable after this project. And so that's what's needed, and that's what benefits all of us.
I wanted to circle back on the comment you just ended on. So that's what I don't understand. So how, if we just ran through the projected hookup dates for the CTV and they're all, prior to 2029, and then you're saying the project expected completion date is 2031.
Yeah.
So how do those things marry up? And are you actually saying that these are all going to get pushed out beyond Valley Link if Valley Link is the necessary link to hook up our data centers? Is that really what you're saying?
I'm so glad you asked that question because I didn't cover it. So what we know from experience is that data centers ramp into their contracts over a 4 to 5 year period. And so even though our substations are going to be energized, let's say in 2028 or 2027, they're not going to get, let's say they're asking for 100 megawatts or 200 megawatts. They're not going to use it all at day one. They're going to ramp over 4 or 5 years. And so the forecast takes that into account. And so all the projects that we're putting in service now, all the projects we put in service 2 years ago are contributing to that load growth. So that's what we mean. So we don't know when we get there, but could their megawatts be capped? Could they not fully build out their campuses that are already approved? We'll have to wait and see what the dynamic looks like. But that's what we're really talking about when we talk about sort of the substations that we're putting in service, the commitments that we have from an obligation to serve, sort of the projections that the counties have made on those facilities being in service and those facilities, the data centers being in service and ramping. That's what we're taking into account when we say these projects are needed. The reason why the reliability concerns are there is because that ramp is putting pressure on the existing network.
Okay. I get that and appreciate the explanation. And Brian can probably correct me if I'm wrong here, but I guess I still don't really understand because that 10 million square feet of data center was approved without this project ever being conceived of, right? That was built based off of the 230
Yes.
kV line that was going to come in. So, I guess your answer is probably just going to be that it's a changing environment. So you know what you needed.
Because again, we can only plan to what the PJM process is. And since they were looking 5 years out, our headlights only went 5 years. Last year, they went 8 years. So our headlights now go out to 32. But we don't know what's going to happen in 33 because PJM does not allow us to plan that far in advance. For instance, we heard that they'll have an open window this year, but they're only going to look 5 years out. Well, that's 31, right? So, right, did I do the math there? Yeah, 31. So, or 30. But, so we don't, thank you. So we don't anticipate a lot of issues because last year they went to 32. So, but they get to choose what the headlights are looking at. And so that's why. So back then, yes, we knew that what was needed at the time was just bolstering sort of the local network at the 230 kV level. But each year, we're having a number of projects. We have a number of projects in the Charlottesville area that came out in 2022 and 2023, right? So some of those projects are because of the development that's happening in Culpeper. It's hard for me to explain why one county load growth is affecting a county 5 counties away, but that's just sort of how the grid works. It doesn't look at county lines. It doesn't look at individual load. It looks at what's the limiting factor, and then we have to address that.
To me, I think where the confusion is I would say under normal conditions, Valley Link the electrons aren't gonna end up in Culpeper. They're gonna go through there, they're gonna go. But then it's all a web, it's all a grid together. It's kind of like a water system. You know, this pipe on the west side of Culpeper doesn't help. You don't get water from that if you're on the east side of Culpeper. But if you break that pipe and you're losing, you know, or you have a huge demand over there, it does have a draw on the other side. The electrons will flow where the need will be. So if you have the need here, it may flow all the way to Northern Virginia, but if the need is here, it'll flow back through the 230, 240, you know,
Engineering.
the line.
So we've talked a lot about
some confusion that the public has, because from one hand, they hear, oh, this doesn't help the community. This is just for Northern Virginia. But then on the next statement, y'all say, no, this is to help y'all. And they're like, oh, well, they're just blowing smoke because they're telling us two different stories. And the reality is when you get down to the engineering of it, both are correct. It just depends on the time of the day. Unlike water where it's in hours, in electrons, it's in seconds, and it's the whole PJM is managed instantaneously because they have to regulate how much power is coming in to the grid to make sure it matches. You can't store electrons to match whatever that demand is. So that's why, you know, they have this real complicated control center where they're monitoring everything coming in, everything going out. And it's just like an organism that it kind of makes it difficult for a lot of people and it creates a lot of confusion. I mean, it's obvious, you know, NIMBY not in my backyard. Nobody wants it in their backyard. But me personally, if we don't want to end up like California, it better be in somebody's backyard. We're going to have brownouts and blackouts. But
That's what we talked
just
about
me
too.
personally.
Nobody wants power lines in their view shed, but also they want their lights to turn on.
Yeah.
And they want to take a picture and store it in the cloud and,
And they want to be on the internet like we are.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the two other companies that are part of this, are they similar to, are they power companies in other states? Is that what that, okay.
AAP and FirstEnergy are primarily, so AAP is like a holding company, so they have Appalachian Power, which is in Southwest Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio. FirstEnergy is in Maryland, they're PEPCO, PG&E, so they're in Pennsylvania,
Pittsburgh,
Philly, they're also in Ohio.
And then what's the difference in a brownout and a blackout? I always
We
thought,
had this debate last night, so well, our perspective is either lights are on or off.
okay,
What we try to do, I think people tend to think brownouts are not everything is blacked out.
okay.
Or what we would call rotating blackouts. So in an emergency condition and what we call load check condition, we would try to isolate where we can save the system. So we've reduced megawatts. And then if it was an extended period of time, we would sort of move that around the system. So not any one pocket was out of power for long periods of time. That's how you sort of save cascading outages that happened back in 2022, 2023, when the Northeast blackout happened.
Well, that's a great answer, but I don't understand the answer. When a brownout happens, what would we see or what happens? Obviously, we know a blackout means nothing's on. When a brownout happens, you talked about the mechanic, but what do we see? Is it like a faucet's only half on?
Well, so it's either on or off. I think
What do we
that's,
see in a brownout?
I don't know. I mean, we had this debate last night in Loudoun County. From a utility perspective, it's a blackout. But I don't think we would.
The
utility would not say.
Y'all are gonna stop it before it turns into a brownout. To me, and I use the wrong term, but a brownout to me would be when your voltage starts dropping, your lights start going down. That's bad for a lot of things, so they're not gonna, PJM isn't gonna allow that to happen. They're gonna start doing rolling blackouts to prevent a brownout.
So part of our mitigation before we get to blackouts is voltage reduction. But voltage reduction would not have an effect on people's power quality. but we're able to sort of mitigate the megawatts by reducing the voltage. If that didn't work, then you would call it what, load shed or blackouts. So I don't use the term brownout
Okay, reducing the voltage then.
as part of the mechanism to save the grid. And then your next step is load shed.
When you reduce the voltage, what do people see?
Nothing. It literally is just a physics exercise of the grid. Yeah.
So the things aren't gonna, the prices aren't gonna freak out.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Good.
One thing I would add to this is that Dominion employs a lot of people and they're well respected and I appreciate that. So.
Thank you. We take the responsibilities we have very, very seriously. You know, the linemen, the system operators, reliability is not just a banner on the wall. They take it very, very seriously. The second to meeting our obligations to serve, meaning we don't have discretion on what customers we get to serve or not serve, is our fiduciary responsibility and reliability. And that's all to you, because we know that has an effect on the economy, that has effect on business operations, that has effect on people planning for the future, enticing businesses that they can depend on us as a service organization or a county for services. We take it very, very seriously.
What new generation's coming on in the PJM? Obviously, I know you have the announced project in Cumberland, which is a very significant plant. But are we seeing any other generation power on other than the offshore wind?
So offshore wind, like we said, it's producing electrons right now and set to be complete at the end of this year, early next year. We have another gas plant in Chesterfield County that is now under construction. That was approved.
And that one's not a peaking plant, that is a.
So that's a peaking plant. But what's happening now, just based on the dynamics of not enough generations, is peaking plants are running more often. The plant in Cumberland is not a peaking plant, it's a baseload plant. And then we'll see what happens. PJM just opened, it was going through a transition cycle process. It paused generation 5 years or so now because it had so much in the queue. And Dominion Energy is one of the largest zones for new generation and couldn't keep up. So it paused the queue, figured out a transition to get to a new process. And they're finally in that. And so
That constrained, I guess, was because of solar.
it
5 years ago.
it's mainly too much. It was solar. Back then, the way that the PJM process works is usually it's like first in, first out. But the cost of the developers and really what happens on the transmission side, because they have to cover any transmission upgrades, they play the game. All right, if I'm here and my cost for transmission upgrades is $1 million, well, I could almost get a better price by coming out of the line, going back and having somebody else pay for that $1 million, and then I get a ride for free. And so that was happening a lot. And so PJM didn't have any certainty of actually what projects were spec and what projects were for real. And so nothing was really happening. And so now they put in place site control criteria, more certainty that the project's going to happen, monetary put-ins to make sure that there was no sort of that gamesmanship happening. And so now that's what they've implemented, and so hopefully we'll see more generation be more firm and less speculative.
On the usage side, Dominion has significantly increased the study period time. For when we started the CTC, the study period was 3 months. Now it's 36 months.
I think a lot of that is because of speculative. In your forecast, how do you manage that? How do you manage some of these requests that were, because I mean, we saw them, like, you know, we were lucky none of them hit here, but we saw people come who were speculative and speculative and we're not going to build. They're speculative and will build, and they're speculative and won't build.
Yeah.
Especially in the data center. Everyone's a data center developer, until they have to pony up money. How are you able to manage that in your forecast?
So,
So
So on the demand, are you talking about demand side?
Demand
So we have a queue process now with large loads, primarily data centers. And we have some of those same checkpoints that the distribution companies, remember, we're serving the distribution companies. And so the distribution companies have to have some of that, those markers for their data center customers as well. So Dominion Energy Virginia distribution has upfront costs, on non-refundable, monetary commitments, when they sign contracts, 14-year commitments, all this sort of stuff. That's all meant to try to get more firm developers in the queue. And so what we're doing twofold is we're building more generation.
But we're also managing the load on the system through the queue process and trying to match up the transmission planning process and the generation planning process, which are not on the same timeline, and very complicated through PGM, but we're trying to match those up. So now that we're in a cadence where we can bring on load that doesn't overly stress the system, and there's generation to serve it. And that's why we have the queue.
Awesome. Great, thank you so much. Do we have one more question? Sorry.
I started with the board meeting. I'm curious of your assessment of the board meeting, the shirts and the whole thing.
I was not there last night.
You were.
They were.
So,
I would just say, just generally speaking, I think those are healthy conversations. I know that it can be very difficult. I know it's a little bit of the sausage making process. It should be. It's never going to be clean. When we go back out to the public here at the end of this month and in June with revised routes, it's going to be seen as we don't know what we're doing because it's so public. I think that's healthy. I would rather take that criticism than saying that we're doing something stupid with it.
who paid for the shirts?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
You guys know?
I don't know who paid for the shirt.
Okay.
But I guess, what was
We
your?
were here.
Yes, we were
Yeah,
here.
and it was a robust conversation and I think one of the key things that I remember, there was a statement made, I think, by someone saying, you were made to come out here and talk to us. And that is not a requirement. We do the community engagement. Because it's the right thing to do. And it helps to inform us. As Greg was saying, it helps inform us as they are refining the routes because they're getting, you can do a lot off of a desktop application, but there's a lot of information that people can share, like family cemeteries and things like that, as our siting and routing coordinator that presented information, Lane Carr said, that's an important piece. We are doing something with that information in those meetings. They're not just talking to you to be nice. They're trying to be nice, but they're also collecting information and they are recording all of those comments and they collect all of those. And then as he said, they're incorporating those as they refine those routes with an eye to lessen the impacts to the extent possible.
It's called the fear bucket. You gotta bring it back to the office.
So, yeah, it's the right thing to do to have those community engagements. It's not, we're not being made to do that. It's something we do voluntarily. So.
Thank you.